Our next question is about housing. It's from Caitlin Leach. She is a housing advocate with the Parkdale Community Legal Services. Her question is, how will you protect the rights of Toronto's tenants and create truly affordable rental housing in the communities where low-income people already live?
Caitlin has an excellent question, in part because this is where we've lost so much ground. We've lost so much ground over the past 10 years. We're now the most expensive city in Canada in which to rent. And that's a problem for low-income communities, but it's also a problem for young people who are coming to the city who are employed and can't access housing. So if we look at people at all different places in the housing ecosystem, if you will, housing affordability is a significant challenge. So I've put forward a plan that's bold, but it's also realistic. And it is a plan to deliver 100,000 units of affordable rental housing on city-owned land. Now, Mr. Tory thinks this plan is too bold. In fact, I've worked with the housing industry, and the building industry says we need more supply. That's where we need to start. We need significantly more supply.
Well, we've got to do more of what we've now realized was successful for us. If you look back to 2009, there were targets set for the construction of affordable rental housing by the City Council of the day and the Mayor of the day. It was Mayor David Miller. Those targets were not met until partway through my administration, my leadership. They just hadn't been met any of those years. And so we've met them and we've now exceeded them, and that is something that I'm happy about. And we discovered that what was key to meeting those targets for the first time ever was putting up city land, putting up city resources where we could by way of deferred development charges, deferred taxes, and so on, and inviting the private sector to come in and build the affordable rental housing we needed. And so now the challenge is to ramp that up substantially, because the target that was set in 2009, even though not met, was not adequate to meet the need. And so I've committed to building 40,000 more units and using the same formula. City land being put up, more development around transit, because we've done an inadequate job there, using the other city tools such as development charges, taxes, and so on, to make it happen in partnership with the private sector. And I think we'll be helped a lot by something I fought very hard for, along with my other big city mayors across the country, which is a national housing strategy that will have, starting in 2019, the federal government coming back in to the housing business, and a lot of it is going to be devoted to increasing the supply of affordable rental housing. And so I'm committed to make sure they meet their obligations they've set out, that we ramp up our efforts, and that we continue with programs that have been successful in getting us at least to meet and slightly exceed the previous targets. Now we have to ramp them up. More city land, more often, in more places, especially around transit, and the money that goes with it to provide other incentives to make sure the private sector responds. And so I think that is going to be the key to all of this, expanding the supply of affordable rental housing, but doing it in a way that has a realistic target. You know, I could have picked a number out of a hat, as I think others have done. I picked a realistic number our staff recommended. The targets of some others have been deemed to be unrealistic.
So right now, we're selling off those city-owned lands, surface parking lots, for example. We're selling them off, and we're actually fueling the high-end luxury market. The city is playing a role in that. It's crazy. We have an opportunity to use that land to deliver affordable housing. The problem right now is that it's being done on a very tiny little scale. But if we completely reoriented the use of that city-owned land to deliver affordable housing, well, we could change this city and ensure it continues to be accessible for another generation. I've also proposed rent to own. This is a very exciting new program. In fact, my campaign office has been overwhelmed with people calling saying, hey, sign me up for rent to own, where your rental payment is a contribution towards a mortgage, so that within 5 years, people can access home ownership. So it's the city helping people make the leap to home ownership. And I'm running out of time, but I don't want to lose sight of the first part of this question, which is about protecting existing rental housing. And this is an absolutely critical priority.
My follow on this housing platform, though, is why is your housing platform better than your opponents, and is it even doable?
So this is a really important question, because there's a fundamental difference between my platform and Mr. Tory's. So Mr. Tory's assumes that we'll continue to use some city-owned land for luxury housing. And my platform actually assumes something very different, that the city will play a leadership role and make a core part of its mandate delivering a significant amount of affordable rental housing. And the rent to own is another overlay on top of this that ensures access. We used to do this. St. Lawrence neighborhood's a perfect example that has stood the test of time, and it's about making that kind of housing a priority in the future instead of the luxury housing. That's a big difference between what we've proposed.
I will not try to fool people by putting an unrealistic target in front of them, even though I'm a candidate for public office. I pride myself on the fact that when I set out something that we're going to do and put it in front of the people as a target for achievement on housing or anything else, that's exactly what we're going to do, and if anything, try to exceed it. And so the 40,000 units that I've talked about came from our city staff, who actually gave me a lower number as the maximum they could do, and I pushed them to get it a bit higher. The 100,000 number you see coming around out there from others has been deemed by the people who build the houses to be, and I quote them, doomed to failure and unrealistic. I don't want to disappoint the people and not achieve the targets we set out, and I think the 40,000 will make a big contribution to improving things, and if we can exceed that, then that's terrific. But I think if you look at the two plans, the tools we're going to use, public land, transit-oriented development, making sure that we use all the other public resources available, including the federal help, are the same.